פירם נוני בורי רשב וחתום שהחיוני וקימוני הגיוני לזמן הזה פירם נוני בורי רשב וחתום שהחיוני וקימוני הגיוני לזמן הזה חי לימון אבו רחמון חי לימון אבו רחמון קרזמן קי לימון קרזמן אבו רחמון קרזמן קי לימון קרזמן אבו רחמון חיילה נפלון ממצורייני כאשר עושיסו לבזייני זה מדו בידה בכו מהי קצת שנייה מדו בוד היום מדו בין משיח פירם נוני בולי חשבו חבוני החיוני וקימוני הגיוני לזמן הזה.
Hello everyone. One of the unique aspects of Purim that differentiates it from Chanukah is that there is an obligation to have a Seudah, to have a meal. This year, with Purim coming out on Friday, that becomes quite the challenge. And indeed, the question is why? Why is it that on Purim there is a chiyuv Seudah, an obligation to have a meal, and not on Chanukah? Many different answers are given to this question, but I'd like to suggest one that I heard many years ago from Rav Hershel Shechter Shlita. The Gemara in Meseches Shabbos, Daf Pechet Amud Aleph, talks about the giving of the Torah. And in its context, it says, Kafa alehem har kegigit, that the Jewish people, unlike what it says in the written Torah, didn't exactly accept the Torah willingly, but rather God had to force them to accept the Torah. The Midrash Tanchuma then asks, why? After all, it says in the Psukim, Nasev and Ishma, we all taught our kids that they willingly accepted the Torah. What happened that indeed the Gemara says that there is an element of force? And the Medrash answers, and I quote its words, that it wasn't the Torah shebichtav that bothered them, but rather, ala Torah sheba'al peh, sheyesh ba dikdukei mitzvot kalot v'chamurot, v'hi azak mot v'kashe kish'ol kin'ata. It was rather the oral Torah. Namely, when you read the written Torah, then it says to keep Shabbos. It's a very nice idea. Once a week to basically slow down. Once a week to calm down. Not so hard. However, when you start going into all the intricacies of Shabbos, of how to make a cup of tea and how to warm up food, it becomes much more difficult. From this perspective, it wasn't so much the written Torah that they accepted willingly, but rather it was the oral Torah that they had to be forced to accept. Indeed, based on this, the Gemara does say later in that same daf that even though at Ma'amad Har Sinai there was an element of force, Hadar v'kiblua b'yemei Achashverosh, that during the time of Purim they reconnected to the Torah and said we accept it, and this time willingly, both Torah shebichtav and Torah sheba'al peh. From this perspective, we can understand another Gemara. The Gemara in Psachim, Daf Samechet Amud Bet. The Gemara there has a difference of opinion between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua how to celebrate Yontiv. Everyone agrees you can't fast on Yontiv, but Rabbi Eliezer says you can spend the whole day in shul learning and davening, just don't fast. But Rabbi Yehoshua says no, you have to have part of the day learning and davening and part of the day eating. However, says the Gemara, they both agree that certain days need to have a major Seudah, and one of them is, I quote, Hakol modim bePurim deba'inan nami lachem, that during Purim you indeed have to have that meal. And even though the Gemara's reason is because it says Yemei Mishteh v'Simcha in the Megillah, which should have been the reason, the She'iltot, the Rav Achai Gaon, comes along and says that's not the reason, but rather, and I quote, Va'adifa Yoma de Puria, and indeed Purim is unique, Ki Yom Shenitna Bo Torah, it's exactly like a day that the Torah was given. In that Gemara earlier, it did say that Shavuos is one of the exceptions of the rule, where everyone agrees that you have to have a meal, because that's the day the Torah was given. So too, says the She'iltot, Purim is the day where they accepted the Torah mechadash, they accepted the Torah willingly. That's the day, just like Shavuos, that everyone agrees you have to have a meal. And indeed, the Netziv from Volozhin, in his Perush to the She'iltot, spells it out, and I quote, if it was just because of the miracle, Chanukah also had a miracle. There are many days that had miracles. What makes Purim unique? That we have an obligation to have a Seudah, Ela inyan mishum, and he quotes our Gemara, Mishum hachi chashiva ka'atzeret, Yom shenitna bo Torah liYisrael, because it's like Shavuos. Indeed, Purim is a day in which we re-accepted the Torah, and therefore, just like on Shavuos, where everyone agrees you need to have a major meal, so too on Purim. I think this leads us to the following conclusion. The Purim Seudah should be happy, you should get a little tipsy, but there should be Torah at it, because that's part of the celebration of the day. Part of the celebration of Purim is not just we were saved, let's eat, but rather we re-accepted the Torah. The Jewish people at the time not only were saved from a clear and present physical danger, but they, in their healthy intuition, connected it to a spiritual achievement, and that achievement was, we are now going to re-accept the entire Torah, both Torah shebichtav and Torah sheba'al peh, willingly. And therefore, it's very appropriate, just like on Shavuos, to have Torah at the meal of Purim. Not just to be happy and clappy and tipsy, which are, of course, part of the meal, and not just to talk about the miracle, which is also part of the meal, but rather to also have Torah as part and parcel of the Seudat Purim. And if indeed we do that, we can understand why only on Purim and not on Chanukah is there indeed an obligation to have a meal.